Well, hello, good morning to you. Welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, USA. I am DJ Paul. And wow, that's a bad, that's a bad one, y'all. Yes, welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, USA. I am DJ Paul. And just looking at the lay of the land right now, there are a few things that I want to venture into. One of them being the situation with Paratici, the state of our communication, not what you think, the communication. It is more so some of us as fans digging in, and I love to use the word arbiter. Arbiter, have my excuse there, being the arbiter of everything Spurs. And so I listened to a very interesting monologue this morning, a video, if you don't mind. And that particular YouTuber share the sentiments that I have over a period of time. And it is about us digging in. And I'm gonna stick with this topic of, is Tottenham Hotspur really in turmoil, or it is the effects of the YouTubers? I don't want to blame YouTubers for our woes. I know that we shouldn't. I am not saying that either. But at the same time, what we are looking at is, how do we communicate on a daily basis? How do we get our points across when it comes to what we believe in, what we want to see, and what is actually happening? I say that because if you take a position, if you get yourself into a predisposed position, and you're not willing to adjust that as the season goes by, right? And we're talking this for both ways. If you think that Spurs are in good hands, then we could very well say that Spurs are in good hands. But what if, as the window and as the year progress, we come to realize that indeed we are not in good hands? My opinion in this instance, we all hold certain positions, but it's whether or not I can release that. And so my position for starters is that I have a very negative take on Johan Lang. I don't, I've not seen in Johan Lang's past wherein he is the man that I think can carry the football forward. And so my take on him was not based on what everyone else is saying. It's about doing some research and looking at Lang. And there's nothing in his background that tells me that this guy is ripe for success. Now, if as he's here and things are happening, he showed me that I am the man in charge. I'm the director of football, and I can go out there and I can find players based on what the manager wants, not what the internet wants, not what I want. Because I'm hoping that for all of us, the objective is to get the best players at the club. And so in this case, I would want to hope that as we go through the process, is that we are seeing improvement in what is happening at the club. And so let's just settle in for a minute and as I bring back, you and Lang back on screen here, the reason why I'm sticking with Lang for just for this conversation, just for what we're looking at here, is that Lang is sort of the person who will split the fan base, right? He will definitely, um, he is splitting the fan base. Let's say that. And for me, it is for me to look at him and say, what is he doing that I don't agree with? First, I don't think his recruiting is effective. I don't think his communication is effective. I think it sounded like a script, and piggybacking on an environment. If we know that, which we do know, that the January window is a very difficult window to find players, your job is to go in, and even though it's difficult, is to understand what Spurs need, not what the league and any other club needs, because any other club will need is that there are deals to be made. It might not be the deal that you want to make in the long term. And so if you're going to come back and say, well, we couldn't find what we want that would benefit the club, maybe down the road, and you're looking at it and you're saying, well, we're saddled with injuries. What about the short term? You get what I'm saying? If, for example, we're linked, and sometimes I don't put two pennies on that the sources are legitimate. Say we're linked to Agliush, right? And right away we can look at it, and we're doing a side-by-side comparison, and we're saying, well, Agliush plays off the right as a staunch left footer. We have that in place already with Kudus, that is going to play off the right. And so, because their skill level is just about at the same, are you going to go out and sign Agliush when you have Kudus already? That's an argument to be made. But then again, the other part of that argument is that you cannot have too many good players. And therefore, if you're going to invest in him, then you have to find a way to use him. What that means is that you have a deeper squad. Is he a squad player? No. But then he himself, right? I can give him Lange credit, right? If the deal does not go through. You can look at it, and the player's going to say, what is it that is in my interest? And fans have to understand that a player is going to look at the club to which he's going, and not necessarily because, the club is not a top 6 club or top whatever club that you guys are always talking about that they should be, right? If a player decide that, look, I can't go to this club because then I want to play off the right and I have Kudus there, then he can make that argument that, look, I tried this particular player that I would love to have. I just bought an inverted right winger, and he was adamant that the project is not for him. I could not convince him that we need him, and then we will work it out, and we will try to play you off the left. We will move Kudus inside and give you more time over there. So we tried. We do everything that we possibly can, and what it comes out to be is that we are just not attractive. Now, giving him that, right? Giving him that to say you tried as a director to get someone in, and that did not work out, but you give me a valid explanation as to why that was not the case, right? Let me make myself a little bit bigger here. let me bring myself up a little bit bigger here so you could actually see me. And so I feel like I was hiding, behind the couch there. That's how we're watching Spurs these days, watching from behind watching from behind the couch, hoping that we don't lose to West Ham. That's where we are today. We gotta make fun of the club, but what I'm saying is that you can understand that. And you can say, well, if you look at the picture that's out there, clubs will wait for players that they need. And in a case like a player like Diamande, which seemed to be circulating on every podcast, every stream, the names keep repeating Adewemi, and it keeps going on and on and on and on. The funny thing about that, right? As I talk about, how I think the approach could be different when it comes to Lang or Lange, is that if I say to you that I would love to sign a Conceição, who is an absolute baller, at Juventus, and I root for Juventus in the in Syria, right? And so I watch a lot of Juventus, right? And I said, can we go out and get that guy? Can we try for him? The first thing is going to come is that no, we can't get him. He's not going to come to Spurs. But we don't know that because we haven't tried. Because you know why? We looked at Conceição and look at his projection. We look at his ability. We know he's a baller. And I'm going to throw Yildiz in there as well. Yildiz is an absolute baller that would work wonders in our midfield. And so, would he come to Spurs? I don't think Spurs is attractive enough, but we don't know what his ambitions are. We don't know if he's yearning to come to the Premier League, and we have not tested that in January. Because what happens is that if you going for a long-term player fix, then what you want to do is that you're going to explore that. And furthermore, you have 120 days when the window closes to send those feelers out. Will Yildiz be available in the January window? And whatever, you talk about, back, room talk. You get a feel and you can write that off, right? It is not going to stop the rumors. But at least you understand that the only way those rumors are going to stop, because people are going to like in the case of Adamada Lookman, if you don't go out there and sign somebody or show interest in somebody, then what will happen is that the idea that Lookman is out there and we don't know why a player who is available, Spurs are not going after that player, who will help us. There's no doubt that he will help us. But what is the drawback to signing a Lookman? The director of football has to don't have to come out and word for word verbatim say this is what's happening. What you do that with action. So you go out there and you find an Agliush and said, look, I know you like, in the interpretation of the action, putting words to it, is that I know the fan base want a Lookman, but here's the deal. I'm going to go sign an Agliush, even though I have Kudus, because I think this player is young enough. He can play off the left, he can play off the right, he can play in the middle, and so I get a versatile player who I can sign for a long term. That is not going to make why haven't we gone out to sign Lookman go away, but it will show that you brought a player in that for the long term, this is exactly what you're trying to do. And eventually, those other Lookman conversation will dissipate. So your action is going to determine exactly what happens. And so even if here's a case in point. For those who don't like Thomas Frank, let's just look at this scenario. You don't like Thomas Frank, and you said what managers you want, you would have like to see. If Bournemouth is sliding in the table, right, and you still like Areola because he's a manager, you'd rather see rather than Frank. Will the position of where Bournemouth is change your mind based on the results that are happening in the present? A lot of people eventually come to their senses to realize that Areola is no different or any distance in terms of what he would bring over Frank, and in some cases the methodology, the tactical way Glasner go about his business, they all are just about the same. It's just a matter of where their teams are. So if Palace is up on Spurs, then everybody wants Glasner. If Bournemouth is playing well, then see there, everybody wants Areola. When Eddie Howe is doing well at Newcastle, why can't we go get Eddie Howe? The minute Newcastle is sliding, then we start to say, well, it's not Eddie Howe's problem that's affecting the team, it's PSR. And it's because and fair play and everything else that we can point to. Everything, nothing has anything to do with Eddie Howe. Not his management, not his players, nothing to do with him. Just PSR, just FFP. And that's how we approach things, and that's how we talk about things, and that's how we deal with things. And so for me, if Lange is not acting in a way wherein he's changing the narrative, then he's not a problem solver. Does he have a toxic environment to work in based on the turmoil that was left by Daniel Levy, created by a board that don't seem to know what football activities are supposed to be and who's supposed to represent the football, just the football of a club and what we're looking for as fans? Now, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, then we don't have to talk about the board. When are we going to have a conversation about football? If we're talking about football, if the football is good, then no one is paying attention to the man behind the screen, because it means the man behind the screen is doing his job. And what we're seeing here, we're fluctuating between the Lewis family and their kids and what they offer us. You know, they're going to invest $100 million when Levy went through the door. And then, you know, we came upon the window and we sold Brennan Johnson. So right now we're supposed to have 133 million pounds waiting in the market. We are 16 days in the market and we make one signing, sold one, and we are netting somewhere in the region of net sale, in our purchase, whatever the deficit is, of about $3 million. And if you add Sosa in there, right, you can say that we spend $20 million with all the activities. And then if Velez go out, that's going to come back down to 10, right? So we haven't spent anything in the market, and we heard that we have $100 million to spend. Let's not even talk about Semenyo. Semenyo was never going to come to Spurs as long as one of the top 6 teams wanted his need. Our top 4 have needs for him. We're not that attractive. We can't overpay for Semenyo, and I covered that already, so I'm not going to get into that as far as this is concerned, right? And so when we look at what's happening, I know there are 2 people who are going to get the brunt of this at the end of the day. And I know the protest is going on. And go out there, in my opinion, make your voices be heard, be loud, and be proud to be a Spur. But at the same time, you have to be calculated and accept some of the things that are not happening. And that has to change in order for it to be effective to the point of where the owners are going to listen to you. And so my point before on other podcasts or other mediums was that if you're going to protest, then talking to me every day about being disgruntled and all the things that you expected and what fans are doing or not doing, if that is not reaching the 63,000 that is going to be going into the stadium, I don't think you're going to have a great measure of success, because you're going to come back and you're going to talk about the same thing and nothing is going to change. If you said you're doing it for the paying public, you're more doing it for the viewing public. Because in my opinion, again, just my opinion on my station, on my podcast, and as a longtime fan, if the objective is to be seen and heard, how effective is that? If when you show up, you have 60,000 people, queuing up to go into Tottenham, in a stadium to go watch West Ham, because it's going to be sold out. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And if you have 63,000 people who's going to jump pack that stadium and you're going to protest, and you calculate that the people who are inclined to join the protest, say you're going to start, I'm going to give you 1,000. Right. And you go back, to last year and the year before, and the last protest that you said, okay, I think we have like 3,500. I'm going to just throw that figure out there, right, for effect, right? If at the end of the day, before match time, when you look in the streets and you have 63,000 people queuing up, like I said before, to go into the stadium, and you can peel off, say, the 3,000 to swell your number to 6, then you're marketing and you're talking to the wrong people. If you're at this point where you're protesting for 6 years, and all you get is the fans booing the manager, booing the players, show up the next time, then what's happening is that you might be effective on the outside, right? And the aesthetic of it is that, yes, you're doing something, but how effective are you on the inside? Because the concession stands are the same. If people show up and decide that I'm not going to spend some money at the concession stand, or if I show up, then I am going to not go in to the stadium and the north stand, right? I'm going to decide that effectively, as a group, everyone who bought ticket for the north stand is not going to show up until halftime. That is breaking in. That is kind of like, what word I'm looking for? I'm looking for that is a step that might be a little bit exaggerated then, until I find a proper word. But if you're effective enough, what I'm saying is that if Vinay and Lange and wherever Lewis is and his big kids are not looking out when the whistle blows at 3 o'clock, that something is happening inside the stadium, I don't think they give 2 pennies about what's happening outside the stadium. I think they just count it as noise, because what's happening is that you are enmeshed with the people who are protesting and the people who are going into the stadium. So until you start getting some connection to the people who are going into the stadium and into the stadium, because boos are there for years. You can boo for many different things, but booing is not effective. Effectiveness is doing something which is tangible within the laws, without being causing damage. Not like what you saw a couple of years ago with United, where the fans who went in early was literally destroying the stadium, destroying cameras. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, there has to be a gesture that after 6 years, Mark, I'm talking to you from the States, right? And so if I were in London, I would be at a protest, right? I would support the cause. And I would support the cause because of Brian, solely because of Brian, and maybe Sava who's joining the protest right now. But Brian Dougal would be my incentive to support him. I don't agree with him for 90% of the time, but I understand what he's saying. I understand where he wants. I understand he wants the club to be better. But Brian is reasonable to the point where he can say, look, I am not actually asking Daniel Levy to leave. I'm just paraphrasing this. What I want Daniel Levy to do is change. So if I see changes, then I can say, well, This is why I'm protesting. I want you to change to make the club better. So if you're making the club better, you can be here and they could bury your body behind the goalpost when you passed. But if you're going to be here, at least that's what I got from Brian, is that if you're going to be here and I'm not seeing improvement on the pitch and how you communicate with us, then I'd rather you go. But if I look out there and the window open and you go out there and said, what were our needs? And you satisfy the needs, then you could do whatever you want to do, because what you're doing is putting the football. What I'm protesting, I'm not protesting the fact that you have boxing in there, are go-kart or concerts. That's not what I'm protesting. I'm protesting the fact that all of those are taking precedent over the football. So when you can improve the football, then I will support you as my executive chairman. And if that's not the case, that's what I got. And in that case, I would have joined the protest, because I understand where it's coming from, because I myself is not going to say I want Daniel Levy out. What I want for him is to do better. And if protesting is getting him to do better, then I would have joined it. That's just my personal way of going about it. But am I going to be on social media every day talking about Enoch out and Levy out and Lang out? And no. If they're doing what they're supposed to do, then they're doing their job. So what am I protesting? You protest because they're not doing their job. And you can, for me, I don't want to take a predisposed position, because the position that I take, that no matter what happens, I want them out. And I regret to a point doing that with Ange. Because what I get to realize is that Ange have won with bad. And the objective was to win. And the football that he's playing might not have been the best. But you know what? The objective, you know what's funny about that, as I drift away from the old protest? If it was a different manager, right? If it was Conte or Jose, let me, because we get close to proving that with Jose, and Levy muck that up, right? Pochettino, right? And they did what what happened with the Europa, and they won. You know what would have said? Would have said that it's great manager take a bad team and won something, and that is what make those managers great. You see, when teams that are supposed to be chasing or being league title hopeful, when they sneak out or eke out a result, what we jump on and say, oh, that's the making of a champion. If we go out there as Spurs and slug it out against, say, Wolves or any other team that's at the bottom, get beaten by Forest, you'd say, well, they're just gonna dust it off and go again. So because they have credit in the bank. That's my regret in being vociferous, that no matter what Ange did, he was a goner. And I didn't look at the fact that irrespective of what happened with the injuries and with everything that happened, at the end of the day, he won a trophy. And so when I look back at it and said, I made a mistake, not that I didn't want Ange gone, because what I'm saying is that if he continues with this football, it's distasteful, in my opinion, and therefore he needs to go. That's my rationale, that's my reasoning. But after he delivered, you have to recalculate and say, wow, was I wrong if my objective was to have a trophy? And then what I start to look at is that there are millions of fans who looked at it that way. And so no matter what I say to them, and when I talk about Ange didn't know what he was doing, they don't see it that way. Because the objective is to win. And if another manager had gone through and won the way Ange did, we would have been celebrating him. And I can back up and said, I was wrong in that respect. And some people are not man enough to come back and say, you know what? Now that I actually look back at it, not because Frank is struggling, because I could have come to that conclusion, right? Because the thing with it is that if Frank was doing well, it would have given us a legitimate reason to say, see, Ange was not good enough. And for those on the flip side who think that Ange should be around, who's going to say, see, we should have kept Ange, and as bad as he was, we were doing better in their minds because that's their guy. So what happens sometimes, we get so partisan that we hold on to predisposed positions and we're not going to let go off of it. When a little reasoning would say that, look, we could change, we could understand where other people are coming from, but we tend to hold on to that. And what is happening, right, I'm going to piggyback off of another YouTuber, is that we go look for the evidence to prove our point. We are now getting into, well, we used to say that Arsenal haven't won anything. This is how we are. Arsenal haven't won anything except the FA Cup since, Arteta took over. We can say that about Chelsea, who spent over $1 billion. But when we actually start to look at it and calculate it, Spurs have spent close to $1 billion to put teams over a period of time together. Ange alone has 400 million out of that in 2 years, when you actually look at what we're saying. And so we have to start, and so that becomes now the narrative, right? And so we move from things that make us feel better because we hold on to predisposed positions. In the case of, say, signing Gallagher, just for argument's sake, we're going to find all the reasons why Gallagher is not the right signing. And I said, hold on a minute here. Hold on a second. Gallagher coming in suits our needs. Outside of Bissouma, who I think is a box-to-box good midfielder on his day, right? When you look at Bergvall, Sarr, and Gray, and what they actually bring, are we asking them to produce big minutes and take Spurs to where they're supposed to be? Or even if we diagnose, which we talk about it, I'm gonna make fun of this, right? When Archie Gray signed, we signed Archie Gray. We say that as we because we're a Spurs fan, regardless of what he was paid, the fee that brought him in. And everyone up until Archie Gray scored that goal was saying that Archie Gray is not the number 6 that we need. He is not the prototypical number 6. He needs to improve. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. And what happened? I have not heard anyone said, well, you know what? Archie Gray is actually a number 6. You know why? Since he scored that goal, that debate has been shelved. And we had that debate for 2.5 years almost, that Archie Gray is the number 6 that we signed. And how could we not go out and get another number 6? Well, we went out and get a real number 6 in Palinia and discovered that Archie Gray, in his own words, is not a number 6. He's actually a number 8. You can't make that up. And so that story now is not in anyone's talking points anymore, because Gray himself cleared that up. Now, what's happening here that is being left unsaid is that Gallagher coming in is going to take care of the number 8 position and kind of tween between the 8 and the 10, and he can go box to box. What that does is that it puts, Gray and Bergvall and Sarr in the category to which they're supposed to be. They're squad players. So you go out and you get a starter who is a number 8. When you look at the calculation, right, of some people, is that we have a number 8 already. But yes, I can answer that question. We do have number 8s, but how effective are those number 8s? Isn't that what you want? That if you look at what we have in the squad, we have 3 players that don't actually make 1, and you can go out there, and even though in technical terms, and skill level attributes, Gallagher is not a ball playing number 8. You know, like a David Silva. He is not a Martin Odegaard. He's not Cole. You know what I'm saying? And so when you look at what he brings and he start to shift the setup and the lineup, I said this before. I'm starting my lineup and I'm looking at what's at my disposal, and I'll say for starters, Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, and Spence. That's my backline. Vicario in goal. Paint your picture. And then I'm saying, okay, I'm going with my 4-2-1-3, right? And I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, so my midfielders, Palinia. Wait for the long pause. I don't want the dead air right here. But then you start to look around and you're saying, my number 8. Right now, I'm going to include that Benton Kerr is injured. I'm going to Madison is not here. Kulishevsky is not here. Bissouma is not ready. And I'm looking around and I have Bergvall, Sarr, and Gray. Right? And I'm looking now because Palinia is there all by himself. And now I'm going to say, what? Who do I put next to Palinia? It's going to be obvious that it has to be Gallagher. And you go to your number 10 and Simmons, and then Solanke is back and you go Solanke. And then you look at your left side, you said Tell or Odebeer or Mwani, which is still a problem. But by virtue of elimination, you now know that Tell is going to play and Odebeer is going to play or Mwani is going to play, because that's all you have. But the point I'm making is that Gallagher just fix a position, even though he's not a ball-playing midfielder, where you're looking for someone to take that jersey, and it's not Gray, it's not Bergvall, and it's not Sarr. And people are complaining that we did not sign the proper midfielder. So don't we build on what we want? We build on different profiles. And obviously, Gallagher fits a different profile. So that's exactly what we're doing. So anyway, I'm going to stop it there. I've beaten it up a long time. Go out and support the protest. I'm not Frank out, Enoch out, no outs for me. I'm just saying that if we're doing something, making an effort to be better, then I'll say protesting the state of the club is welcome for that to happen. And so you should go out and support the guys who are making that effort to bring attention to the turmoil that is happening at the club. Peace. I'm DJ